live stream.
Ya Prof, kita dah live di FB dan YouTube ni. Datuk Seri Presiden pun ada join kita.
Oh, Michael, Datuk Seri, apa khabar? Tak dengar.
Kena.
Alhamdulillah, I'm fine, thank you. Congratulations for the initiative, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, start. Huh?
Nak mula?
Right.
Boleh.
Okay.
Yes, kita boleh start ya.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to CBTM, or Competency-Based Talent Management, Designing Talent for Sustainable Future discussion session, organized by Academy of Professors Malaysia, or APM, and also Malaysian Higher Education Teaching and Learning Council, or MAGNETIC. Before we start, as a reminder, please make sure that your microphone are turned off. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have three panelists who are Associate Professor Dr. Rahayu Abdul Ghani, a lecturer from Faculty of Economics and Management of UKM, Associate Professor Dr. Ismi Rohan Muhammad Jaiz, Deputy Director, Center for Leadership Profiling, CELP Higher Education Leadership Academy, OECAP, and Dr. Ahmad Tab Mansoor, who are the CEO and Principal Trainer, AGM and Academy. Welcome everyone to this session. As the welcoming remarks, Professor Dr. Rosna Awang Hashim, the Head Cluster of Education and Human Development, APM, will give a welcoming remark. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce Professor Rosna. Professor Dr. Rosna Awang Hashim earned her bachelor and master's degree from University of North Texas and received her doctorate in educational psychology from University of Southern California, Los Angeles, USA. She is a senior professor of educational psychology at the School of Education, Universiti Utara Malaysia, and formerly Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic and International of Universiti Utara Malaysia. Her work has focused on topics related to student motivation, college student development, and learning and instruction in higher education. Currently, she is the council member and the head of Cluster of Education and Human Development of the Academy of Professors Malaysia, APM, and a member of the Board of Governance of AIU, or Al-Bukhari International University, and the President of Persatu, Persatuan Akademik UUM. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Prof. Rosna for her welcoming remark. Prof. Rosna.
Terima kasih, Associate Professor Dr. Shakira, Chair of Magnetic, for your kind introduction. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Yang berbahagia Profesor Datuk Daing Nasir, President of the Academy of Professors Malaysia. Yang dihormati Prof. Faiza Shabuddin, Chair of the Cbtm Subcluster, Education and Human Development Cluster of the Academy of Professors Malaysia. And distinguished panelists, we have here today Associate Professor Dr. Ismi Rohan Muhammad Jaiz, Associate Professor Dr. Rahayu Abdul Ghani, dan Dr. Ahmad Tab Mansoor. And esteemed participant, especially from the unit Bakat of the Public University. Assalamualaikum and very good morning, and welcome to the Academy of Professors webinar in collaboration with Malaysian Higher Education Teaching and Learning Council, also known as Magnetic. And allow me to congratulate Magnetic, led by Associate Professor Dr. Shakira, and also Prof. Faiza, the Chair of the Cbtm Subcluster of the Academy of Professors Malaysia, for hosting today's important webinar on CBTM, Designing Talent for Sustainable Future. Well, CBTM is one of the 7 subclusters under the Education and Human Development of the Academy of Professors Malaysia. And today's program aims to provide exposure on competency-based talent management, or CBTM, to citizens of higher education institutions in the country. Well, as mentioned by Gravel and Rothwell, they mentioned that competency are an important tool, much like a compass, to find direction in attracting, developing, retraining, and positioning the best, the most productive and promotable people. Those are very powerful words that indicates the significance of CBTM in higher education by design. Well, I think this webinar is timely as we are navigating the pandemic and its challenges in the post-pandemic world of work. In the process of designing future universities, I strongly believe academics and university leaders will play an essential role. Given the increased complexity and diversity of situations that require immediate solutions, academics and university leaders will be making innovative decisions and responding to future needs. Thus, I strongly believe if Malaysian higher education want to remain competitive, it is imperative that higher education carefully design talent for sustainable future. Therefore, CBTM is the way forward. We would also like to acknowledge the role of ACAT, the Higher Education Leadership Academy, who has organized a series of programs on talent management for excellence series, especially today to ACAP Deputy Director of the Center for Leadership Profiling, Associate Professor Dr. Ismi Rohan, who has been very instrumental to this initiative. I was also made to understand that today is Dr. Ismi's last day at ACAP. I mean, I've been to ACAP many times over the last 10 years. I would like to personally express my sincere gratitude to Dr. Ismi Rohan, who has been synonymous with ACAP over the last 5 years. Saya kira ini buah tangan terakhir on CBTM daripada Prof. Ismi sebelum pulang ke UiTM Shah Alam. So we wish you all the best, Prof. Madya Dr. Ismi. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the objective of today's webinar is to enhance our understanding, knowledge, and skills on implementing CBTM in higher education. CBTM is in fact Malaysia's higher education strategic agenda, focusing on the transformation of human resource management through competency instrument. The development of knowledge and skills capabilities among human resource managers and leaders are considered as an enabler to mobilize this agenda implemented in the country's public universities, especially, which is also in line with Malaysian education blueprint, higher education, for shift number 2, talent excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, before I hand over the session to the moderator, allow me to introduce APM briefly. Well, we have with us today the Honorable Professor Datuk Daing Nasir, the President of Academy Professor Malaysia. Welcome, Datuk. Thank you, Datuk Sri, for joining us this morning. Well, APM was, Datuk. The Academy was established in 2019, and it is an academic-driven think tank that is inclusive, meaning that it includes professors and associate professors from public and private universities, as well from various fields of knowledge. And we are free from political interference, equipped with high integrity, authoritative, professional, and practicing genuine academic freedom. That is our aim. We will serve as a provider of key policy inputs and community welfare advocacy based on facts and evidences, as well as effective check and balance for the formulation and implementation of government and state policies. Well, our main objective of the academic professors is to mobilize the expertise of national professors and intellectuals in the country to help the society and nation to progress significantly. Such as today, we mobilize the authority and expertise of professors to provide high-value policy input and advisory services in the context of policy formulation and implementation in CBTM. Please come and join us. Please visit our website at Academy Professor Malaysia. You can Google APM. It will bring you straight to the website, and you can join us through the form, the online form. So again, distinguished guests, panelists, esteemed audience, thank you for joining us today. Have a fruitful deliberation, and thank you again. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Prof. Rosna, for the enlightening welcoming remarks. And let's us continue with our discussion session. This session will have 3 panelists, and for each panelist, there will be around 30 minutes presentation and about 10 minutes question and answer after the presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, our first panelist is Associate Professor Dr. Rohayu Abdul Ghani. She is a faculty member at the Faculty of Economics and Management, University Kebangsaan Malaysia, UKM. She joined UKM in 1993 after a brief stint at College Yayasan Pelajaran Mara, Bangi. Dr. Rohayu is a proud alumnus of University Utara Malaysia, where she first fell in love with human resource management and graduated with a BBA honours in 1992. She was a shorthorn when she continued to major in HRM, undertaking her Master of Science in Personnel and Human Resource Management at the University of Texas at Arlington, USA, and was inducted into the Beta Gamma Sigma Honor Society in 1994 and graduated in 1996. She is a PhD graduate in management from Cranfield University, UK, where she completed her doctoral research on the influence of work-family conflict on international adjustment. Her passion for research on work-family issues, especially work-life balance, has never waned as she continues to conduct research in the area and supervises a number of PhD students researching the phenomenon. In addition to research on work-life interface, Dr. Rohayu is also currently pursuing research on talent management, and from time to time, she has her hands in research and projects for the revival of Wakaf. Her published research work can be found in various high-quality journals and book chapters. Dr. Rohayu was also involved in developing policies for the Ministry of Higher Education, where she was one of the experts who contributed in writing the University Good Governance Index and Code of University Good Governance in 2011, and later the University Transformation Program, Enhancing University Income Generation, Endowment, and Wakaf in 2016. Aside from academic work, Dr. Rohayu has been very much involved as a practitioner in talent development. She has held several administrative positions within UKM, including serving as the Deputy Director, Talent Management at the Centre for Corporate Planning and Leadership UKM, and as Head of Industry and Community Networking at her faculty. She has just recently completed her 3rd term of 7 years serving UKM as the founding director of the Centre for Professional and Leadership Development UKM, or known as Professional UKM. The main work with her team at Professional UKM will mainly focus on the developing and implementing various new policies and programs through a strategic plan of talent and leadership development for UKM. Dr. Rohayu has been involved in serving not only in administrative capability or capacity, but also voluntary activities. She has been worked with Majlis Peperiksaan Malaysia from 2000 until now, and she received several awards throughout her career. But one award which deserves a mention here is the award of Faculty of the Year National Award in 2013, when she was the faculty advisor of SIFE UKM, where Dr. Rohayu and her students were hands-on with their work on social business with various communities in Malaysia. She also one of the founding members of Liga Bola Sepak Junior Bangi in 2007 to 2010. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Dr. Rohayu. Dr. Rohayu, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Shakira. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh, everyone. Let me share the screen, yeah. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Shakira, our moderator, Professor Dr. Rosna Awang Hashim, Head of Cluster, Education and Human Development of APM, Dr. Ismi Rohan, my dear friend from ACAP, Dr. Ahmad Mataab, my Sifu, Prof. Dr. Faiza Shabuddin, the project leader of the Cbtm for Academic Leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to try to share with you a little bit of what I think the highlights of Cbtm because to really describe Cbtm for everything that it is, we would need more than just 30 minutes. So as a brief sharing that I'm going to do here today, I hope it will help enlighten some and hopefully even encourage more and more members of the talent unit of all public universities to work towards developing and completing those who have started their work to complete the Cbtm at their university. So let me start by, I'm not going to give a lecture on this, don't worry. But I'm told that I'm to represent academic, so there has to be some definition and some citation just to start so that we know the scope of the discussion. So competency-based talent management. I'm just going to briefly describe competency. We are talking about not only what is explicit, but also tacit. So it's a combination of tacit and explicit knowledge, behavior and skill. Skills that give someone the potential for effectiveness in task performance. So that's what we're going to be talking about here today. And then within the boundaries of talent management, as has been described by Prof. Rosna earlier, it is about attracting, retaining, and developing a special group of people who are of particular value to their organization. So it's the pool of talents that we want to develop for the organization, and in our case, it's for the university. From there, the issue that often get asked about talent management and human resource management is how significant is talent management to the universities or to organizations. The point being, it is not only a matter that is of concern to universities, but actually of concern to many other organizations as well. HR should not be an afterthought. For any organization that considers HR something that is on the sideline, something that is only on the periphery, not as part of the strategy, that's where the organization, you will find that they don't perform as well, and they will not be able to last the challenges faced by the company or the organization with changes in the environment. So if talent management or HR is managed as business as usual, that will not allow the organization to excel. Talent management is a business strategy. And when I say business, I'm not talking about profit-oriented only. Whatever the business your organization is in, talent management has to be a strategy that you consider and as part of the business strategy that you develop for the whole organization. Therefore, we must fully integrate talent management in our strategic plan and not consider all the bigger plans about finance and about the core business, but forgetting about talent management. Therefore, we have to weave competency-based talent management into all of our HR activities. We do not want to seem to be busy doing things that is not of significance to the organization. So why Cbtm? Over the years, there has been many research done that has proven how Cbtm has been successful in getting organizations to excel. Some of the data I'm sharing here, some of the facts that I care to share here is more than 90% of best-in-class organizations had core competencies defined for all roles. And for Cbtm, core competencies is the one that we focus on, because without it, how can the organization and its talent be able to withstand all the challenges that come its way? studies have also found that 30 to 40% of organizations that do have competency-based are more productive than the average organization. CBTM has also been found to increase job satisfaction among employees. It clarifies job standards for performance appraisal. And when the job standards are clarified, it allows for better decisions to be made, and it allows for satisfaction for employees that what they are doing is clearly measured and properly appreciated by the organization. Yeah. Oh, sorry about the double there. Okay, now talent design. When we say talent design, sometimes it's a concern about how do we design talent? What do we mean by designing talent? I put it here as we start with why. The why is the why of the organization. Why do we have the organization? What are the values? What are the vision? What is the strategy of the organization that makes the DNA of the organization? And once we know what's important, what is our values, where we are heading, our vision, and how we're going to go there, to how we are going to get there, it gives us a clearer understanding as to who we are as an organization, and then we can develop and be very clear about what our core competencies would be. Now, too often, people still would prefer to use job-based approach in trying to develop or manage its people. It's sad to say that job-based approach in managing human resource is goes so far as the era of Frederick Taylor, where everything was very structured, very bureaucratic. And considering that we are now into the 21st century, to still think that a job-based approach is the way forward for every organization, for every employee, or for every job in the organization would be rather archaic in terms of philosophy and approach. The talk or the conversations that has been on competency-based has actually been around for even before there was the term competency-based talent management. It started with McClellan, I think he's quite a renowned psychologist from Harvard. People who have studied management would have studied his motivation theory. And he started talking about or using competency-based when he was asked to look into how to employ the right person for the military. That's where it began. And instead of just talking about the position, the qualification, he came out with a way to measure competencies. And then this was 30 years ago, it was picked up by Lawler to further emphasize the need for us to move from job-based to competency-based. And of late, one of the guru of CBTM is Ulrich. Now, however long this has been going on, the conversation has been going on in the academic world, in the practitioners' world. Sadly, in Malaysia, especially in the university, it is still fairly new. We are now only the last, I would say, Dr. Ismi, thank you to Dr. Ismi who's been pushing it through RCAP. We are really trying to make a big difference in terms of how we develop our talent in public universities. So hopefully, competency-based will be considered more seriously as the way forward for universities. Because what we need is to find the fit. Everybody would want to have the right fit for the right person to be doing the right kind of job. However, the fit is not something that has to be stagnant. The fit would be something that we can further develop, because when we look at the fit now through competency-based, we are not talking just about qualification. We are talking about the person's competencies, the core competencies that can be developed as the organization move forward, as the organization adapt to the changes of its environment. So why do we want to design our talent? Because talent design is closely related to performance. If any of you have read the book Good to Great, the author mentioned about how the executives in the book talked about getting the right people on the bus, the right people in the right seats, and the wrong people off the bus. So that then and only then they figure out how to take it to some great place. So instead of leaders deciding on where to go first and then finding who to go with him, according to Collins, most of the organizations that become great from just being good are the ones where the leaders decided about who the right people are to go with him, because it is the right that people want to go, because should something happens along the way, for example, if the direction changes or the strategy has to change, people will still want to be on the right because they are on the right with the right kind of people. So that's how we look at why we need to design our talent. For performance management as well, the cornerstone of CBTM is performance management. We will look into the performance of individual based on the behavior they demonstrate, not based on what they promise they would deliver. And by doing so, it supports organizational capability. And when we talk about organizational capability, we are talking about the unique combination of skills, processes, technologies, and human capabilities that can differentiate an organization from others. These will hopefully allow us to gain competitive advantage. And by adopting principles and attitudes in regards to competency-based talent management, it will then in turn determine and guide the behavior of members of the organization. And this is shown here. Yeah, organizational capability, what do we mean by it? It talks about the social, the technical, the individual, and the organizational component of the organization to allow it to leverage on the core competence of the functional and technical experts, individual technical competence, and individual competence, which then will give the organization its competitive edge. And we have to consider the environment does not remain static. People are always talking about future of work. I borrowed this from a policy book in South Africa, which I think simplified a lot of the things that we are talking about when we talk about what's the future. And we are now currently being challenged by the pandemic. But at the same time, it also presents a future of work that is still not settled, is still evolving. So we are still wondering, what will the future of work be for the world of work? And I'm from a center that's called the Insan, Pusat Insan, Center for Well-being. We're also looking into the future of work. And when you consider the fact that the world is changing and adapting, but if your people are not ready, if your people, you don't even know what their competencies are, and you rely on their job-based description or the job-based performance measures that is simply too static, it will make it difficult for any organization to maneuver the changes that happen in the environment. So 6, we have to consider the IR 4.0. We are now using this because if you ask any of us 2 years ago, before March of last year, we would not even consider doing a lot of our conferences, our classes, our work using the internet, having classes online. But the push towards it now makes IoT, Internet of Things, an integral part of our life. So in understanding how HR affects the business of the organization, 6 imperatives of HR framework to be considered. 1, developing new leadership capabilities for the 4IR. 2, managing the integration of technology in the workplace. 3, enhancing the employee experience. 4, building an agile and personalized learning culture. 5, establishing metrics for valuing human capital. And 6, embedding diversity and inclusion. So when we look at this, we know that a lot of these are some factors that we did not really consider as important when we talk about managing our people. So CBTM will allow us to make the changes accordingly, because competency-based talent management will focus on the core competencies of our people. So if you ask hip or hype, I took this from the dictionary. Hip or hype? It's a colloquial term to use hip. It's from, I search and so used to using it, you forget that you do not know where it came from. It turns out that it started during the jazz world, when people wanted to say whether it's the latest thing to be interested in. So if it's hip, the thing we all want to do, we are informed of as the latest and it's on trend. Whereas hype is something that is uses a lot of publicity and advertising to make people. When we talk about competency-based talent management, although it's been around for a long time, there's not much hype about it. People just try to use it to the best of the organizations that the organization allow. But changes in the environment, our politics, our economy, our socio-demography, and our technology especially, is something that then makes us question, are what we doing the right thing for our people? Secondly, our organization may change direction. So if we don't get into something that's hip, it's gonna be something that we lose. Job-based are harder to change. Job become irrelevant, replace, or be displaced. But competencies are adaptable. And why do we say that it's important to be adaptable? Because environment changes. And for us to be more sustainable, we need to be able to adapt. And we see here that even what we think now is the trend, the 2000, we're talking about talent management, the projection is that in the future, it could be work experience instead of just talent management. Goal, integrated HR transaction system, single platform into ecosystem of apps. Technology is really encroaching into our life. The platform, we are used to LMS. It could be something that changes after this. Job models, competencies, people, project, goals and feedbacks, technology, and then the design. So with that, I will say, thank you.
Thank you very much, Associate Professor Dr. Rahayu, for her sharing entitled CBTM, Hip and Hype. Ladies and gentlemen, now I welcome any questions related to Associate Professor's Dr. Rahayu presentation just now. You may switch on the microphone, or for those audience who are in Facebook, you may write the question in the Facebook as well. And we have audience from Facebook and also YouTube.
No question, we can proceed.
Yeah. It seems that we do not have any questions now, but maybe later, okay. Any question can be posed, okay, along our session, and we may read and also can ask the questions after all the panelists presented as well. Ladies and gentlemen, our next panelist is Associate Professor Dr. Ismi Rohan Muhammad Jais. Let me read her simple biodata for everyone before I welcome Associate Professor Dr. Ismi. Associate Professor Dr. Ismi Rohan Muhammad Jais is currently Deputy Director, Center for Leadership Profiling ACAP, who takes charge of the profiling exercise for higher education sector Ministry of Higher Education. She started her career as a lecturer in 2000 at University Technology Mara in the field of language and linguistics. A local graduate, all 3 degrees are from University Kebangsaan Malaysia, UKM in 1999, Bachelor in Education, Teaching of English as a Second Language. 2002, Master in Arts, English as a Second Language, and 2012, PhD in Language Education and ICT. Her areas of interest are translation, language, and ICT, as well as communication and interpersonal skills. Among the portfolios held in the career climb are resource person for educational technology in language, fellow at Institute of Leadership and Quality Management, ILCAM, head of training unit for teaching and technology, head of unit for leadership and talent management at Institute of Leadership and Quality Management, ILCAM, and the final post held at Institute of Leadership and Quality Management, ILCAM, was acting assistant vice chancellor leadership at ILCAM UiTM Shah Alam. Her roles has given her opportunities in a wide range of involvement related to competency-based talent management, or CBTM, such as think tank of the Ministry of Youth and Sports and Technical Committee of Talent Management of JPA, KPM, and Intan to review and revisit policy matters related to competency evaluation and intervention program for civil service. In the journey of being an academic administrator, her passion towards talent management and leadership has evolved tremendously. Due to this, her publication list range from a diverse titles of language and ICT, communication, as well as talent management. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Associate Professor Dr. Ismi Rohan. Dr. Ismi Rohan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Associate Professor Dr. Shakira Samsudin, our esteemed moderator this morning. I am very humbled to be in the presence of viewers who I believe come from a very diverse background. Yeah. So Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh, and a very pleasant morning. Yang berbahagia Datuk Seri Profesor Dr. Daing Nasir Ibrahim, the President of APM. Professor Dr. Rosna Awang Hashim, Head of Cluster, Education and Human Development. Professor Dr. Faizah Shabuddin, Head of Project for CBTM under the Cluster of Education and Human Development. Yeah. And with us, allow me to also welcome Associate Professor Dr. Yazrina Yahya, who is the Acting Director of ACAP, and Associate Professor Dr. Azila Ahmad Sakawi, Deputy Director, Center for Leadership Development. Today, I'm actually very blessed, to be in the presence of two senior panelists in the area of competency-based talent management. Of course, my dear friend, Associate Professor Dr. Rahayu Abdul Ghani, whom we have worked from the very yesteryears, Dr. Ayu, trying to push very hard in terms of internalizing succession planning as well as talent management in universities as well as higher education. And my close associate of recent, my opportunity at ACAP, of course, Dr. Ahmad Tab, in navigating the true understanding of what CBTM is among higher education sector, specifically for our talent management unit of higher education. I must thank Prof. Dr. Rosna for mentioning that today is my last day. Alhamdulillah, it has been a wonderful 5-year journey. And I must say that I have truly learned from various people who have really built my knowledge and developed my passion even further in talent management. This subject is very close to my heart, and I am very happy that today Dato Sri Daing is in presence of our session as the CBTM propagated by University Malaysia Pahang way back in 2014-2015 has put us in a lot of perspective to what we do at ACAP. Yeah, so ladies and gentlemen, allow me to share what we have done at ACAP. My spirit today with the team of ACAP, Dr. Yas as well as Dr. Azila, is to put into perspective of how what has been mentioned by Associate Professor Dr. Rahayu in terms of competency-based talent management from the theoretical perspective. And of course, at ACAP, the task given to us is very much in terms of the operational side of CBTM. I'm very glad that the continuity of our session today has put Dr. Rahayu first, who is my mentor in human resource and management. As the biodata reads, my background is language and linguistics, a subject that is totally alien from what I'm currently doing at ACAP. So I have the opportunity as well today to appear in Academy Professor Malaysia platform when Prof. Faiza invited me. So I thought this will be a good way to say farewell and also to apologize to the whole ecosystem of higher education if for the 5 years of what we have been doing at ACAP may have been different perspective of things. And of course, in any context that work in the academic world, I will strongly say that we always have the two sides of the coin. Yeah. This is where the preparation of the whole understanding of CBTM has begun, yeah, at ACAP. Allow me, with the team of ACAP, to put in context the roles of ACAP in strengthening leadership, the insights of the current state on succession planning and management, yeah. And we will share a little bit on what we have done, yeah. We started small, but we hope it will be continued and it will derive to a destination, as mentioned to Dr. Rahayu. We want it to be a competitive workforce. Therefore, we have to attract talent, we have to retain talent, and we have to ensure that the ecosystem is being embraced by everybody in the higher education sector. All right, and we will share a little bit also in terms of the processes that we went through, the people who were involved, and also programs that have been very instrumental in terms of driving CBTM in higher education. Yeah. And of course, a little bit of story, yeah, the challenges and pinpoints, although I understand Dr. Ahmad Tab will also touch upon that. This is the perspective of what all of us at ACAP with the Ministry of Higher Education and also with all our engagement sessions with all the professors and also academics and administrators of higher education to look into how we aspire and we dream to put a credible and trusted higher education leadership and talent management ecosystem. And of course, I will end the presentation from the words of ACAP to put what's our soul and sustainability towards excellence. Before I begin to narrate further on what we have done so far at ACAP, I would have to put a disclaimer that in every subject matter that we discuss, there would always be the two sides of the coins. There would be people who agree, and there would also be other quarters who would disagree. And of course, there would be people who would be on the fence, yeah? And this is where, as we searched, as we worked together with all 20 public universities for the past 5 years, we realized that the bottom line of leadership and talent management is always a subject matter that has no definite algorithm. There is no formula to say 1 + 1 = 2. You put competency 1 and competency 2, therefore you get a ready vice chancellor. Yeah, and this secret recipe that is narrated from one generation to the other is documented in many various forms. Yeah, videos. Yeah, as we Google, we'll be able to fetch a lot of materials related to leadership and talent management. Now, the key element for us at ACAP, of course, as I mentioned, our task is very much to operationalize what we read in our journals, yeah, what we read in the theories of in human resource, and what would be apt for the ecosystem of higher education. So how did we start at ACAP? What we did was we studied, we analyzed the whole population of people whom we need to develop. Yeah, and these will be people who will be in the radar of our talent management. And as we see, even in the perspective of the current state in Malaysia, if we take along only the public universities, we already have about 31,740 academics. And what more if we're talking about administrators? It usually would double the figure. And at ACAP, the thrust that we hold on to under RMK 11 is accelerating human capital development for an advanced nation. And specific to the role of ACAP, given in the scope of our Nota Jemaah Menteri, yeah, which was established in 2006 and later ACAP was set up in 2008, the focus is very much on leadership. So when we mention the word leadership, even at ACAP, there will be quarters that come from different dimensions, different angles, saying that we should not just focus on institutional leadership. There should also be that component of academic leadership. So this along today, we will share with you what the perspective that has been propagated by our former directors, yeah. And I've had the privilege of working with 3 directors, yeah. Professor Dr. Muhammad Kamal Haji Harun, Professor Datuk Dr. Rohan Yusof, and the most recent Professor Dr. Nordin Yahya. As mentioned by Prof. Rosna, whoever sits at ACAP, there is a big responsibility, or rather a huge responsibility, for the Ministry of Higher Education that relates very much to the Malaysia Education Blueprint 2015-2025, specific to higher education. And we are responsible in terms of moving and driving shift 2 of the blueprint, that is talent excellence. Yeah. And if I may share a very quick data that we have currently, in a total of about 2,900 active professors we have in the system, we have managed to profile 525 academics from various backgrounds, public universities, private universities, as well as polytechnics and other related agencies. Well, I know that I'm actually putting my head on the chopping board today, as we know that for the past few weeks, ACAT has been in the limelight, and we have been mentioned in a lot of platforms, yeah, various platforms, social media. Of course, we have people who support us, people who say that we have to move forward in improving. Some say that we have to do away with a lot of other things that may not be necessary for the higher education. And I think the very strong word is the portfolio that I'm currently holding, that is profiling, yeah. And of course, we have had various sessions to understand what is actually the reluctance of our higher education in terms of understanding, even to embed profiling in the whole human resource cycle of work at ACAP. Yeah. This would be the true north that we use in due reference to what we plan at ACAP. Yeah. And of course, the tool that we have is to understand the role of the Board of Governance. And in this green book, of course, there's a lot of mention about the responsibility, the autonomy to be given to the Board of Governance in terms of appointment process, in terms of governing and running the university. What is very close to the portfolio that I'm currently holding is very much the Orange Book, that is strengthening academic career pathway and leadership development. And specific to that respective Orange Book, the one that we have to study, we have to embrace, and we have to really put close to our heart is the differentiated career pathway that has been proposed by a lot of our academics who were involved in the writing up of the Orange Book, yeah, or in short, we call it DCP. Now, allow me to come to the concept of CBTM from a different angle. Looking into context, how people have been given us, of course, positive as well as negative remarks about what we are trying to do. But at ACAP, we believe in terms of keeping the consistency and being perseverant, we have to look into what would be workable, what is viable, and what can be measured. So we bring forward this theory of multiple intelligence, and I think Prof. Rosna, coming from the education background, would be very much familiar in terms of understanding the types of intelligence that we have, trying to narrate how human exists in this whole ecosystem. The mankind that we have in the society, we all come in different strength, and we come in different areas that need to be improved. None of us as human is perfect. If I may take a little bit on the Quranic verses of human existence in Islam, I may not have this language for Quranic verses yet, but I'm building the competency through my network with all the talent management unit. They've been guiding me into the perspective of defending ACAP, trying to indicate, some people say that our competency models are too westernized. Yeah, we are using words that are too Western based. So as we study, we review, we revisit our competency model, they are just English words that come from vocabulary of human resource competency books, for instance. Yeah. So this is where we believe that at ACAP, the balancing act of trying to address what are the concerns of our academics, what are the concerns of our administrators at the higher education is very pertinent in order to mobilize what we aspire to do at ACAP. If we look into the context of Surah Yunus, ayat 3 dan ayat 31, it says that it has something to do very close to leadership. Teras kepada pengurusan adalah amanah, which is Al-Amin, and kuat is Al-Qawi. And it is mentioned that seorang pengurus dibentuk dan bukan dilahirkan. Yeah, and we have also another translation to the term Al-Qawi dan Al-Amin, which is being put in the context of keupayaan, competency, integrity, dan kebolehpercayaan. And this is further supported in terms of understanding the relationship with the multiple intelligence brought forward by Howard Gardner, is that manusia dicipta dengan kepelbagaian, tanda keagungan Allah. So the above is very conclusive statements and facts for us to say that people come with different abilities and competencies, and these competencies can be developed. It is not something that is stagnant, as mentioned by Dr. Rahayu. It is a competency of evolution. We see people grow from one phase to the other due to their experiences, due to probably their relationship, their network with people, and also the opportunities that they've had along their career as well as along their journey of life. So it's about how people move and change and develop themselves in terms of something that can be measured. And we look in the context of ACAP, this is where we strongly believe that competency-based talent management is the way to go if we are designing a future sustainable, competent and talent management for higher education. This is one also, the fundamental of work at ACAP. We will not miss this beautiful narrative of falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan. As we see what's being put in the box 1 and 2, we need to compare what we mean by tangible traits and what we mean by intangible traits. And this is where the 4W and 1H comes into perspective for ACAP. When we look at the philosophy, our role as administrator at ACAP, myself, Dr. Iyas, Dr. Azila, is how do we translate this philosophy to the ecosystem at ACAP? What does the philosophy mean, even in talent management? Why do we use this as one of our main references? Where do we go from here? And who is responsible? And how do we do it? So this is actually a very big question that all of us will have to reflect upon, because the answer is not at ACAP. We can move, we can drive, but we understand that universities have autonomy. They're governed by the board of directors, but we push hard to believe that this is one of the strategies that will mobilize a lot of productivity in the universities. We further look into the whole public higher education leadership ecosystem in terms of the key leadership positions in Malaysia. I will not touch upon anything that's got to do with the appointment process, as everybody is well aware that the appointment process of VCs and DVCs are owned by Jabatan Pendidikan Tinggi. Now, the numbers, the figures that we put in perspective is for us to show that there is a red light for us to address. That is the urgency of higher education leadership. People have been saying that leadership is in crisis. Way back in 2012, it has been mentioned, and until today, 2021, we are still discussing the same issue and we are still in the same state. So where and what should we do is very pertinent, that today we open our minds and we have to be very receptive that something needs to be done to give hope to our young academics who are going to be the next generation in our university. So the role of ACAP, of course, is to establish effective leadership, talent management, and succession planning. Now, I know even the word succession planning in my 5 years engagement with the universities is a very sensitive word. So we look at several sectors or units in universities. They either put themselves as talent management, ada yang panggil like UKM plan pewarisan, ya. So these are all names that we put as a brand to state the fundamental of succession planning. It has become so sensitive that it shows like as if we are never ready, and we do not want to even get ourselves involved in succession planning because we don't want anybody to supersede us in any of the roles that we hold. So this would be a challenge for us to realize that we are losing probably the potential of our young academics. I must quote what has been mentioned by Tan Sri Wahid Omar recently in one of his sessions, is that at the age of 40, it is considered prime time for the industry. 40, early 40s, mid 40s, even before they get into their 50s, they are already CEOs, they are already COOs of companies. Yeah. But where are we in the higher education? For us in the higher education, we take a different stand. 40 is probably too young for anything, probably too young for deanship, probably even too young for any leadership role. And when we realize the potential of these people, they probably already get into their 50s, and we want to put them into position, they probably reach 57, 58 and leaving already or exiting the system. So this is where the pertinent role of ACAP is to look into how we strengthen the national top talent pool for key leadership positions in higher education. And as the theme of APM today, as this holds strongly in terms of sustainable future, this is also where we believe the sustainability of leadership has to be executed in order to mobilize and drive the vision and mission of the university. We move next to understanding the ecosystem of higher education. So as administrators at ACAP, we understand that talent mobility is now very evident in the education system today. We have professors moving from one university to the other to helm key leadership positions. And we have the 5 clusters. And we ask ourselves, can leaders from RU go to MTUN? Can MTUN cross to Focus University, MFUN? Can MTUN go to MEUN, Malaysian Islamic University? Because we understand that there are different DNAs, there are different expectations, and there are also different measures of talents. A professor in one university may not be at the same standing or a similar standing to another professor from a different cluster. So these are all the interesting perspective factors that we zoom in at ACAP, because we have to also cater the 3 groups that we have in the university: the students, the academics, as well as the administrators. And in all our documents, we focus very much on students and academics. But what about our administrators? So when we talk about competency-based talent management at ACAP, we put together a framework that takes charge of both wings, the academics as well as the administrators. We are not worried about students because shift 1 of the blueprint has put a very significant importance in terms of student excellence and student talent. Now, this is another uniqueness of higher education ecosystem that we hold strongly to. We have one wing that is the academic leadership, and the other side is the institutional leadership. Way back in 2015, 2016, this was already propagated by Professor Dr. Muhammad Kamal Haji Harun when he was here as the director of ACAP. So these are the key elements when we put under the context of academic leadership. Do we just look at citations? Do we look at H-index, research, publication? Or is there a bigger definition or parameter that we have to conclude in terms of what we define academic leadership is? And if I can recall, my memories back then in terms of our documentation is a lot about talking academic leadership in terms of being a public intellectual, of how you relate your field of discipline to the benefit of the society. And on the other wing, we have the institutional leadership, or the IL at ACAP, we call it, which is the ability to lead with clarity of purpose and vision. Again, another question that comes into perspective every time when we post this anywhere in our platform for discussion: is academic title a crucial factor? To put someone as a key position of the university, what is the ultimatum of the vision and the mission of the university? Must it be a professor with an H-index of 300, a citation of thousands, Or do we want to look for a person who's versatile in leadership, who has got the ability to network, who has got the ability to think strategically, and who's got the ability to put university and to drive university to the next level? And in order to customize the whole CBTM framework in this unique ecosystem that we have in higher education, these are the 5 areas that we have discussed very thoroughly: the fundamentals, the criteria, the competency, the achievements, and how do we balance this. And when we say the word criteria, it becomes now very sensitive because people say we must have a set of criteria to appoint the VCs and the DVCs of our universities. But when we throw back the question to them, what's the criteria? they won't be even able to give us a conclusive framework that says this would be the criteria for RU, this would be the criteria for M2, and so forth. In due respect, because we have our different DNAs, now we have used words like seorang pemimpin kena ada aura. Tapi aura tu nak measure macam mana, kan? Jadi dekat ACAP ni kita worry when we use words like aura, kita guna mungkin perkataan-perkataan yang berkait, for instance, with values, like for instance, a person mesti mempunyai kebijaksanaan ataupun wisdom. So how do we measure wisdom? So these are the things that we put into perspective to understand that there are traits that are tangible and there are traits that are intangible. So we want to worry about the measure of tangible and let the university worry about the intangible, because these talents are with them. Now this is a very straightforward CBTM culture between ACAP and university. Our ultimate at ACAP is to strategize on how we institutionalize CBTM at higher education. Like Dr. Ayu mentioned, in the university, this may be a new culture. But way back, if we go back to probably in the early 90s, early 2000, we have had general exams for our civil servants, even to make sure that they be able to climb their promotion, climb in their career. So we have had PTK, for instance, penilaian tahap kecekapan, and was there in existence for about 3 to 4 years. And it all way back, if we look into even the falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan, the word competency has always been the heart of every work and every generation. And so at ACAP, we believe it's just about putting the brand. Because as my stint at ACAP in 2016, when it started in 1st July, what I did was to study a lot of research work that was done by very prominent researchers in our higher education on succession planning, on competency model. So way back 2011, 2014, there are a lot of documents that we have in our keeping that states very clearly that in order to move leadership, in order to move talent management, there needs to be competencies that we need to derive and hold on to. So CBTM is not something that is truly new for higher education. It's just to revive, to give new light to it, to make sure that we are able to have assessment to intervention that is more valid, and of course to look at how university can use the CBTM in order to put up their training plan. I think this is what is very hot right now, But let's come back to the fundamental of the purpose of CBTM. Do we want it to be for talent management, or do we want it to be for succession planning? Are these two domains very different? Of course, when we talk about talent management, it means that we have time to groom, to develop all our talents through a very structured and holistic intervention program. And when we talk about succession planning, it's usually the due processes that will identify who would be the best three to fit into the position that will be vacant. So at the end of the day, when we look at the context of succession planning and talent management, we need to have a structured and holistic approach to talent management so that the consequences of that is that we will have an effective succession planning. So this is the whole journey of ACAP. Many may think that we're doing work within our own context of ACAP, but to share this opportunity of platform that I have with very diverse academics as well as administrators, we started with a lot of buy-in sessions. We did a lot of work with the top management to get their commitment, to get their buy-in, and we worked very closely with all the persons who were in charge of the training unit as well as the talent management unit. So we have had workshops, we have had several sessions to agree and to disagree on criteria set in terms of talent identification. And of course, at ACAP, we focus very much on establishing our leadership assessment center. And of course, we have tried almost every other tool that's being proposed to us way back in 2015, 2016. And then we have our development program. And later, we look into how do we monitor all these talents who have been closely involved in our programs, and eventually to have that output of top talents that we currently have 525 for the national top talent. Now, this is where the uniqueness comes back again in terms of promoting what we have had in that journey of CBTM. We would like to state that we clearly understand that the two domains are critical. The academic leadership, you must have stature before you can actually bridge yourself to, or you can transit yourself to institutional leadership. And there's no reason why ACAP has been said to dismiss that component of academic leadership, because currently we have a project that is headed by Professor Dr. Faizah Shabuddin to look into the context of CBTM for academic leaders. What are the competency domains that are required in due respect of the DCP Orange Book that we have that states very clearly the 4 tracks: the teaching learning, the research track, the professional, as well as the institutional leadership. So it is not something that we have left out at ACAP. Of course, in the journey of doing things, we have to mobilize one to ensure that one is stable in support of the other. So Alhamdulillah, I must say that with the support of all the talent management unit, the VCs, as well as the Ministry of Higher Education, we are able to work very closely in terms of putting the institutional leadership, and we are waiting for the project by Prof. Faizah to see how it will fit into the whole puzzle that we currently are doing at ACAP. This is the execution framework that we use at ACAP. If we look into any human resource and management book, they would go within these 6 stages, the identification, the assessment, profiling, development, monitoring, and sustainability. And in due respect of the autonomy given to the university, this is where you will draw your attention to the first process, which is identification, in which universities identify and endorse potential leadership top talent. So this is where the role of universities is very critical, because they will become the feeder to ACAP in terms of implementing the 5 process that comes after that. To share with you how we started off, the leadership enabling domains. A lot of people were involved in these sessions, VCs, former VCs, industry leaders, and we put them in one room and we tell them that now we need competencies to be identified for our leadership assessment center, and these competencies must govern what our expectations and our how we derive to what would be a competent VC or DVC. But when we put everybody on the table, we realized that there'll be a lot of different perspectives. So we ended up with actually more than almost 50 over competencies to be evaluated. So just imagine, with 15 competencies that we currently have, our professors have got to go through a 2.5-hour session of DEI. So just imagine if it's going to be 50, it's going to be 60 competencies. So at the end of the day, of course, at ACAP, our spirit is what would be the competencies that are really core, that's generic, that could be utilized across the 20 public universities. And we see the evolution of our competency framework. I agree very much with Dr. Ayu. We're talking about future of works. We're talking about students having to develop new competencies to advance and also to navigate what's the challenges of today, and what more of tomorrow, And this is where the lifespan of the competency framework at ACAP, we have kept it at 2 to 3 years based on the advice given by our Lembaga Penasihat ACAP, with the composition members of people coming from industry, higher education, as well as the ministry. And why is the lifespan of 2 to 3 years? Is to take into account that the higher education ecosystem is very dynamic. Changes happen. Therefore, the need to have new competencies to be put in, to be evaluated and to be measured is very important in our leadership report card. Dealing with academics, of course, we cannot run away from making sure that we have literature review, we have documents to support why we use behavioral event assessment. I think for a lot of academics and educators here on the platform, when we talk about behavior, if we look at the behaviorist theories, we go back to the theory of psychology, behavior is one very innate characteristic that is difficult to change. Even if it's changed, it may take some time. Kalau dalam konteks kita guna colloquial language tu, kita kata bila hidayah dah sampai lah, kadang-kadang baru berubah sikap kita itu. So if we look at the behavioral event assessment, it carries a 0.61 validity. And just to share what we have experienced at ACAP, we tried almost 3 to 4 different instruments. But at the end of the day, we have to decide on who are the target people who we are assessing. And at the moment, the pool that we have, they are all our eminent professors. Of course, we cannot put them on a personality test that has 175 questions, for instance, yeah? Or we cannot put them on team building activities to measure whether they are fit or not fit into the position. Yeah, so we have got to zoom into what would be the most suitable instrument or tool that is to be used to cater to the eminent group of professors whom we are profiling. These are the people who have been involved in terms of endorsing our leadership competency and instrument before we even get things going at ACAP. So it is a work process that takes the holistic dimension of this group of people. The composition is very diverse. We have had people who have been CEOs in the industries. We have people who sits as our chairman, our board of directors, yeah, VCs, former VCs, yeah. And of course, we have a very outstanding, prominent higher education person who speaks very clearly about what his expectations of leadership, that is Tun Arshad Ayo. And he would give perspectives of different areas in terms of what we do at ACAP to ensure that at ACAP, the competency that we use to measure and to evaluate our professors are governed, are being checked, and also being endorsed by a group of professional people. Yeah, we further did in 2020. This again was another session of revisiting, another session of reviewing our competency model, our assessment and instrument that we use at ACAP, and also how do we establish leadership standards for higher education. Yeah, we talk about going forward to have a version of our competency model 3.0 that takes into very critical competencies, which are number 1, foresighting, and number 2, the global mindset. Yeah. We've done this. 19 out of 20 public universities. Leadership Cafe, where we go down to all 20 public universities, we met all the talents. Yeah, we met all the talents. We talk to them. We share what we do. Yeah? And we were trying to also get feedback, but apparently itulah bila kita face to face begitu, the professors have been very kind and very nice to us. Yeah, so we basically got very minimal feedback from all the leadership cafes. But of course, outside of that session, people have come to say that a lot of things needs to be done, a lot of things needs to be put in. Yeah, and this is where at the end of the day, to put in context the whole framework, the whole cycle that all of us have gone through. We are only waiting for USM, which is the final university, but due to the pandemic, we were not able to conduct it. So this is our contribution to ensure that we embrace the spirit together and we learn and share from each other. Now, under ACAP, we understand that we want competent leaders to be there in our talent pool. But before we even do that job, we have to ensure that we train, we expose all our human resource and talent management personnel to understand what is competency-based talent management. And Alhamdulillah, way back in 2018, we established a program, and this is the first program that is under ACAP, that is awarded professional diploma program in competency-based talent management, awarded by University Malaysia Pahang Advanced, UMP Advanced, yeah. And why UMP? As my narration at the very beginning, because when we were establishing this CBTM in the context of ACAP, we understand and we were informed that CBTM has actually matured in the human resource of University Malaysia Pahang. And this is where we got connected to Dato' Daing to understand, and his team, to understand how CBTM was being introduced in the context of UMP academics as well as administrators. Alhamdulillah, we now have about 80 personnel from talent management unit as well as training unit who have been fully trained through a 10-module program related very closely to CBTM. And what more, we have zoomed in into higher education context. So to put the summary of what we have done, this is the whole CBTM ecosystem at ACAP. We have 3 centers. My center, leadership profiling, the portfolio that will be my final assignment today, is to cater to the 3 bullets: identification, assessment, and the profiling report. Now, our intention is very much to support the other 2 centers, which would be the Center for Leadership Development and Center for Leadership Sustainability, to ensure that there is a cohesive and pragmatic framework in terms of internalizing talent management and talent development with the purpose of strengthening competencies and values as leaders and putting into context the 2 domains, the academic leadership as well as the institutional leadership. My final lab with ACAP. None of my team has seen this, but as I was preparing for Academy Professor Malaysia, thank you, Prof. Rosna, thank you, Prof. Faiza, I would like to take the spirit of summarizing what work we have done at ACAP using this beautiful word ethos approach. And we've looked by definition. Ethos means to acknowledge the spirit of a culture manifested in its attitudes and aspiration. And because of the uniqueness of higher education, we always claim that we have to look into the academic leadership standing, then only transit them into the institutional leadership roles and position. So that is the culture that we live in. And we have to acknowledge, we have to embrace. And at ACAP, we have never gone against that will. So what we mean by ethos in our approach is very much to look into the ethics of how we do things. We formalize our engagement sessions with top management and national top talents of higher education. ACAP doesn't visit university through sneaking in through gates that are non-permissible for us. So we formalize a lot of our engagement sessions. We talk to the top management, we talk to the VCs, to the registrar, and also to our top talent. And we have a very transparent process. Transparency is very crucial for us because we indicate what information to be fetched from the universities. And of course, we have to also have due respect on the processes to ensure that whatever information that is fetched will be purposeful and the information is to be utilized. And of course, the third one is holistic. We try very much to embrace what's in the ecosystem, what's in the culture, looking into the attitudes and aspirations of our higher education, and we try to calibrate this with what would be the practices of our industry partners. And of course, the fourth one is trying to be objective. As much as, of course, a lot of people have been given us feedback in terms of the profiling report, and obviously because the opportunity of not being able to see the full report that we prepare to be presented to the ministry, it is the objectivity of the assessment that probably needs to be highlighted here, whereby it is a third-party assessors, and we do not only depend on our human resource industry, we pair them with our prominent higher education leaders who were former VCs as well as former DVCs. And the last word is, of course, synergy. As I mentioned, ACAP and universities have to work together because this talent that we have in our Guardian do not belong to us. So to end, probably is to talk about some check and balance. Whether we are really serious about talent management, even succession planning, what's the clarity of purpose in terms of doing this too? And what's the context of higher education? Is there something wrong with the people that we have, or is it the system? So we believe that we have good people in the system. So why is it that we always have a big question mark when it comes to leadership, when it comes to talent management? So the question is, where do we go from here? And I'm glad that under APM, Prof. Rosna is a very highly respectable professor, and I believe her expertise in education and human development can look into the side of human potential for talent management of higher education. Some questions for us to reflect, whether this CBTM is new, and Dr. Ayu has mentioned it just now, Do we really need to go big on succession planning? And a very critical question, have we seriously addressed the root of failure in implementing succession planning in university? Unless and until we do that, then I believe it is just going to be another webinar series, another platform of discussing and debate, but no action is being taken. And at the end of the day, I must say to everyone, to represent the team of ACAP, it has been a real struggle for us. It is not easy for us to put a competency-based talent management system in a higher education ecosystem because it comprises of professors, who are experts in their field, associate professors would always have that different point of views. As my disclaimer from the very beginning, the two sides of the coins. People, process, output has always been the worry at ACAP, whether we have the right competencies of people to transform the human resource, the talent management, even the training unit of universities, whether the process that we are currently doing is suitable, whether it is even effective, whether even if it's giving impact to the universities. And of course, at the end of the day, the concern at ACAP is very much on the output and the database of talent, as well as the profiling report that needs to be fetched by the ministry, that needs to be fetched by even university members. And at the end of the day, our spirit is to derive to a sustainable talent management framework. And we believe at ACAP, we cannot do this alone. It has to be with the universities. And these are some of the things that we are driving at the moment. Some have managed to reach to some stations and achievements. Of course, to say that we already have a Cbtm framework that is very complete. We have had publications to put together what have been done by all public universities. We are trying to work and push in terms of having a Cbtm consortium subject matter expert, which I believe this can be mobilized under ACAP together with Academy Professor Malaysia. And we would like this to go international, to show and to indicate that the Ministry of Higher Education, the public universities in Malaysia have taken a kickstart into mobilizing and in terms of institutionalizing Cbtm. One of our proud achievements is the intellectual property that we have received in terms of the system management for talents in higher education and university leader directory. When we presented this to the IP office, this was the first human resource talent management to be registered. So this is where we believe that there is a huge potential for the talent management system of higher education, and we need to just be serious and consistent about it. And we have done a compilation of talent management best practices of public universities, volume 1. It is now going into volume 3 already, and also a document on the standard operating procedures of leadership and talent management in higher education. And this is where my summary will be for the team of ACAP, to indicate that we are currently managing talents that do not belong to ACAP. Kita ni macam Foodpanda, macam Grab dan juga Netflix lah. We create the platform, but we wait for what will be inputted by the 20 public universities. Who will you put in our talent emporium, in our talent database? Because at the end of the day, we become the delivery of the system to the next level. That is the ministry as well as the search committee. And this concerted effort has to be continuous between ACAP and university, because we worry if one day we ignore and we deny the truth about doing talent management in universities, we will continue to have this issue. When the time comes to pass the baton, we do not have the people. And even though we have the people, as we see on the other side, which is on the top right, we keep holding to the same people in our talent management pool. We ask ourselves whether we are genuine, whether we are authentic in our talent management, because at the end of the day, we may miss this one person who probably is the right fit for the position. Because why? Because we worry about legacy. We worry because at the end of the day, the ultimatum is not about grooming talent, it's about leaving the office and later to show that at the end of the day, there is nobody that can replace me. So at the end of the day, the leadership gap will continue to be huge. And what more now, at ACAP, we have the issue of gender. Whether a women leader can surpass the role of what our VCs who are male, our DVCs who are male. So these are the issues that have been put on our table in terms of looking at feedback from the external quarters in reference to higher education. Why are there very limited women talents in our national talent pool? So these are the things that we seriously need to address. And I believe with the transformation of the competency-based talent management, ACAP together with the 20 public university, this is what we aspire for. We want to have a structured, trusted, and caliber ecosystem for leadership and talent management in higher education. And whatever we call it, whether it's competency-based talent management, whether it's competency value-based talent management, whatever brand that we need to give to it, the real concern, the fundamental of things is to put a real concern about leadership in which the beginning is the talent management. So these are real people whom we have worked with. All the talent management representing the 20 public universities. And to those who have missed ACAP for a very long time, we have not met physically. So thank you very much. This is our building. It is still the same. So we hope we will have opportunity to cross path again. But the spirit of ACAP, we hold on to competency-based talent management because we need to see what can be measured, what can be put in terms of something that is stable, to embrace and give hope to our future academics and administrators who will lead and helm the universities in the near future. So with that, thank you very much to Academy Professor Malaysia for giving ACAP this opportunity to share the initiative, to show and to also address the concerns of many quarters in terms of talent management and higher education ecosystem, and what we have done towards mobilizing CBTM with the talent management unit of 20 public universities. So with that, thank you very much, everyone. Assalamualaikum, and over to you, Dr. Shakira. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Associate Professor Dr. Ismi Rohan, for her sharing entitled Institutionalizing Competency-Based Talent Management in Higher Education. And she has included all her work and also experience in ACAP regarding the talent management. And I believe her enthusiasm will not fade in leadership and talent management after leaving ACAP, inshallah. Ladies and gentlemen, now I welcome any questions. And also all audience are invited to type all the questions, all your questions in any of the platform, whether in the Zoom platform, whether in the Facebook, or even in the YouTube. If we do not have any question for now, okay, we will still wait for the question at the end of the session, inshallah. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce our third panel, Dr. Ahmad Tab Mansoor. Let me briefly read his professional profile. Dr. Ahmad Tab Mansoor has a senior level professional experience as CEO, Senior Director and Dean of Private and Government-linked organization for over 25 years. In-depth understanding of executive development and education, as well as international business experience, having conducted business in Asia, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Transformational leader with excellence consultancy skills and proven ability in developing and executing business plans which exceed expectations. He offers highly expert knowledge of executive education, strategic human resource management, academic and professional accreditation and quality assurance, marketing and strategic business development, and skills in aligning both academic and industry-wide executive development with market demands to produce results. He has various areas of expertise, okay, besides competency-based management. He also involved with learning program design, development and delivery, international cross-cultural communication, coaching and mentoring, executive development and education, training and development, and so on. Yeah, and he has more than 10 areas of expertise. And also, Dr. Ahmad has a various professional experience as well. He has become the CEO and principal consultant of AJM Academy since January 2017 until now, a group CEO of SMRT Holding Berhad from August 2018 to February 2020, CEO Finance Accreditation Agency, FAA, of BNM subsidiary since May 2012 to December 2016, Senior Director, Asian Institute of Finance, AIF, also BNM subsidiary, April 2009 to May 2012, Professor and Dean, School of Business and Management and Professional Studies of Management and Science University. Yeah? Dean and Principal Consultant, Faculty of Business Law, Multimedia University, and also Human Resource and Administration Manager at the local and multinational companies, May 1993 and to September 1997. In terms of his professional and academic qualification, Dr. Ahmad received his professional training practice from the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, CIPD UK 2012, accredited competency professional, the Institute of Leadership and Management, ILM UK 2014, professional certificate in human resource management, MIPM 1994, HRD in human resource or management from Multimedia University Malaysia 22, Master of Philosophy, URP in Industrial Economics, University Technology Malaysia 1993, and Bachelor of Science, Urban and Regional Planning, University Technology Malaysia 1989. Dr. Ahmad has received more than 10 awards, yeah, and the latest is the Business Leadership Excellence Award, World Leadership Congress and Awards in 2015, and also he has received Distinguished Research Award by Allied Academics USA in 2000, Research Award by Allied Academics, the same award in also Research Award by Allied Academics USA in 2000, and also he has received Intel Award in 1997. Dr. Ahmad has published in various publications such as international referred journal articles, 18. There are a total of 18 articles and also more than 25 proceedings. And Dr. Ahmad also have given training and consultancy programs and also projects for more than 20 projects, including competency-based talent management, coaching and mentoring, succession planning, business development strategy, and so on. So ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome one of the SIPU in competency-based talent management. So let us welcome Dr. Ahmad Tab Mansoor. Dr. Ahmad, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shakira. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Distinguished guests, my powerful fellow panel members, and ladies and gentlemen. So thank you very much again to Academy Professor Malaysia for giving us an opportunity to share with all members here about CBTM. I think that we had a great session earlier with Dr. Rohayu and also Dr. Ismi. So basically, Dr. Rohayu covered a very fundamental and theoretical aspect of CBTM. This is our very good understanding what is CBTM is all about. And also Dr. Ismi has covered the structure of CBTM within the institution or the Institute of Higher Education in Malaysia. So what I'm planning to do here is very much on the practical aspect of the CBTM implementation. I think we have heard about so many times, I think for the last few years about CBTM. Actually, CBTM is not something new. It's been there for many, many years. But only recently, I think it's get a quite big interest among the institution in Malaysia, particularly in the institution of higher learning. Yeah, so I think there are a few aspects of implementation that we are concerned about, particularly when we want to implement it. Not only in terms of the structure, but also how we assess this or the evaluation or the assessment of the competency. So there are a few parts I'm going to share with the members here today. The first one, I just want to give some very brief of CBTM overview. It's been mentioned by Dr. IU just now. I think we have a clear aspect, but I want also to talk about the challenges that we're facing with CBTM, particularly when we come to the implementation part. I think this is what I derive from my some short experience with the IPTA or University Awam when we are developing this competency structure. Yeah. And having said that, I think there are a lot of opportunities or potential for CBTM. Yeah, so we are trying to look into that. Well, I think what Dr. Ismi mentions is a lot of challenges. That one for sure. In everywhere that we are doing this kind of initiative, because something when once we want to introduce something new, this is something changes, the way how we do things, the way how we manage our talent. Yeah? Unlike before, the way how we do is too traditional way, conventional way, but now we are talking about competency based. So it's quite normal for anyone, individual or organization. You have the feeling, changes is not something that easy, and because many people are scared of change, how to change, a fear of change. You see, normally that people always fear of change. Yeah? Because why? Because normally why people fear of change? The first one, because we are, a fear of losing. People feel that they are losing something, that there's something that they are, used to it. And suddenly that we want to change the new thing, that your fear of losing. Secondly, people that they fear of process. Because when we introduce this, they come to their mind, a lot of work to be done, a lot of things I need to learn. It's a fear of process. Yeah. Thirdly, sometimes that we feel a fear of outcome. So when we implement CBTM, is going to work or not? We spend a lot of time, we invest a lot of money here, effort and everything is going to happen or not. So a fear of outcome. So this we need to overcome, and by understanding what are the challenges, but also important that what are the potential of CBTM that we can derive for our for this process and give ultimate benefit to the organization or to the people in the organization. Yeah. So when we talk about the overview, I just want to talk about all the while the traditional HR is very much based on job description. We still doing this for many years, even until now. Most of the time, our HR, the way how we manage is very based on our job description. That's why in the university, I think you have your MyJD, the system that you have MyJD and things like that. Yeah, that's the traditional, whereby the activities or jobs are the foundation of work design. So this is the thing. But this way, I think it's increasing out of touch because of the competition that we have within the environment. Yeah. So when we compare to the competency-based talent management, the focus is very much on, it's not on the task or not on the job. It's basically very much based on the people. So the focus is on the people rather than the task or the job. Yeah. So this is what's happening. Yeah? So because why? Because number one is because when you talk about job description, the focus is on activities and responsibilities. By right, we are supposed to focus on the measurable outcomes and result. Yeah, so this is the focus. Yeah? So what are the workers or the employees could produce? This is the focus. It's not so much the list of tasks or the list of job or the list of responsibilities. So this is the time for us how we convert or the understanding or the definition or the what they call it, the interpretation of those activities or the list of tasks or list of responsibilities into something that produce result, something that we can measure the outcome. Yeah, this is very important. And secondly, because of the changes happening around us, yeah, so job description is simply cannot be written quickly or changed quickly to face with all these changes. Yeah? So this is something that is a challenge for us when we manage our talent. Yeah. So this is why I think there's a need for us to change this perspective from so-called a traditional work-based HR to a competency-based HR, because competency-based HR concentrate on the person, I mean the people, yeah, and then on the output or the result. Yeah? So the people, if they're competent, they will able to produce the result. Yeah. So that makes the approaches, the competencies, they become the foundation for the entire talent management function. This is very important. Yeah. And then with all the aspect of talent management, when they integrated through the competency, so that is why the rather than the through traditional notion of job or work activities, the organization has a competency with talent management. So this is where you tie all the activities or the function of HR based on the talent or based on the competency, whether from your recruitment and selection, training and development, or even your succession planning or reward system, that kind of thing. So this is very, very important. So this is where how we move or migrate from the so-called traditional based talent management or human resource management to a competency-based management. But while we are going through this, when we want to move from the so-called traditional HR management or process to the competency-based, we are facing with a lot of challenges. Yeah. So in this perspective, I would like to share some of the quite important challenges facing by many institutions when you want to move from the so-called traditional based HR to a competency-based HR. Yeah. So the first one is on the inconsistency of competency framework. So basically, I want to share with all of us here, there are four main challenges. Number one is the inconsistency of competency framework. Secondly, identification of critical competency. The third one is developing the competency dictionary. And the fourth one is competency assessment. Let me elaborate one by one of these challenges. Yeah. So the first one is on the inconsistency of competency framework. Yeah. So I'm referring to the institution of higher learning. Yeah. The common competency framework applicable to institution of higher institution. Is it possible for us to have a common competency framework? In many cases, it may not be possible because every industry or every institution, we may have our own objective. Yeah? We may have our own set of people, culture, structure, system, or even processes or technology we use. And we have a different level of development or maturity in terms of our talent development. Yeah. So again, I think this is what mentioned by Dr. Ismi just now. What will be our value or our belief in the culture when we develop our competency framework? Because most of the time, our main reference is based on the so-called Western competency framework. So this is where we are thinking the challenge is that whether we should be able to come out with our common competency framework for our institution of higher learning, which based on our own values, belief, and culture. So this is something that we need to look at. Yeah? The second part is on identification of critical competencies. It's very, very difficult because we always say that when we talk about competence, it's about knowledge, skill, or attitude, or attribute. But the point is that whether we are talking about as a separate element of knowledge or skills or attitude, or it's a combination of KSA. Yeah. So in this case, that is very essential for us to consider individual organization vision, what we want to achieve at the end of the day, what will be the objective or strategic objective of individual institution, what will be the current roles, what will be our expected knowledge, skill, in order for us to achieve future goal, and how much essential of these competencies are to achieve the goal. So this is very difficult when we go through to many organizations. I think my personal experience, we found that for us to identify what's supposed to be in the core competency, the generic competency, or even in the leadership competency, it's very difficult for us to identify that correctly because of the differences or different of the priority or the vision or objective of individual institution. But having said that, for the institution of learning, I think we should be able to come out with a very, not say common, but I think something that applicable to the most of the institution. I think this is very important for us. What will be our core competency, generic competency, leadership competency, or even technical competency that we should share among a different institution. Yeah. The third one is that in terms of developing competency dictionary, competency dictionary is the heart of competency-based management. Yeah, so this is very important that when we develop the dictionary, we have to be very careful. Yeah, because it involves the assessment, the interpretation, and also what we are supposed to put in the dictionary. Yeah, so basically there are two important components when we develop the dictionary. The first one is competency definition, and secondly, the behavioral indicator. Most of the time when we develop the competency definition, the definition is not so clear. It's not be able to, it's quite difficult for people to understand the kind of competency. So sometimes that when we develop the definition, we must have a very clear structure of the definition. So what is about the definition? Yeah? So what is what they call it, the benchmark of the definition, and what also the outcome within the definition. So when we talk about a particular competency, it must be clearly stated in the definition. What is the competency is referring to? What is the standard or the benchmark that we want the competency to be tied to, and also what will be the outcome when someone that will have that kind of competency. This is very important. And this also must be translated or described clearly in the behavioral indicator. Yeah, so this is very important. This is what we meant just now when we decide on what's supposed to be in the competency. So in the behavioral indicator, we must be able to clearly state how the behavioral indicator relate to the knowledge, relate to the skills, as well relate to the attribute or the attitude. It must be spelled out clearly in the behavioral indicator. Yeah, this is very important. And the next one is on the assessment. Yeah, this is also a challenge for us. How we assess competency. I think I remember just now Dr. Ismi mentioned about some of the characteristic that we want to measure when come to the leadership. You know, you are saying that we want somebody yang ada charisma, ada aura, that kind of thing. How you measure that? So this is very important. It's very challenging for us even to measure the knowledge, the skills, or even the attribute, or they call it the attitude. Yeah. But this is very important when we want to design the competency assessment. It's something that we have to remember these two fundamental or principles of assessment. Number one, that competency, when we measure that, is something that can be seen and can be measured. So when we describe in the competency dictionary, every behavior or behavioral indicator you must be able to measure that clearly. This is where we must be able to identify the competency target level. What would be the target that we expect for every level of the competency? And we should also be able to come up with a competency standard. What will be the standard we are looking at? Yeah? So this is something that we can relate to your current measurement of your performance. You know, sometimes you have your rating for your performance, the same rating that also you may be able to use for the competency assessment. So that this is the idea is that we're trying to overcome the so-called subjectivity in terms of our competency assessment. Because the current practice is that when we measure the assessment, most of the time we relate that to the KPI. So we are saying that if you are competent, you must be able to achieve your KPI. So once you're able to achieve your KPI or accomplish your KPI, somehow you are competent. But it's not most of the time in that way. You may be able to achieve your KPI, but you may not be competent, because the competency, we are not only talking about your skill set, not only also your knowledge, but also your attitude or your attribute. So this is something that will happen, that we always confuse when we measure the competency and when we will also measure the KPI. Yeah? So let me show you some perspective of how the competency is and performance, or sometimes you call it KPI. So when we talk about competency, we always say about KSA, the knowledge, skill, or attitude or attribute. Yeah. So from this competency, when we are talking about someone, if you are competent, you must be. It can be measured and can be seen. Yeah. You can see the person competent. You can measure the level of competency of the person through whatever input given by the employee or the staff. Yeah. They produce the input that. Yeah. So this competency is determined in terms of behavior. So the behavior of the particular person, the behavior translated in terms of the input, because they are knowledgeable, skillful, or they have the right attitude. So this is where you describe them in their behavioral indicators. That's why in our competition dictionary, we have the behavioral indicator. We describe what will be so-called the competent behavior. Yeah. So this is where we want to measure. So how we measure that is the measurement of this behavioral indicator is through the process and action. There's someone that we can be seen and can be measured in terms of their behavioral performance indicator. So this is the part that we are referring to when we are talking about measurement, when you assess the level of competency of the person. So it must be seen and it can be measured in terms of the indicator. Yeah, so we are in this process, we translated the behavioral indicator to some form of measurement. Yeah. So when the person is competent, you can measure them, you can see them, yeah, in terms of their behavior. And this behavior also can be measured in terms of indicator. So I give some kind of analogy. Yeah. So sometimes if you have a certain KPI, let me give an example of, normally every year or new year, we have our goal, our plan, or objective for that particular year. So I give an example of, you want to reduce your weight, for example. Yeah. 2022, I decide or I plan to reduce 5 kilo. That is our KPI. That is the KPI. Yeah. So that is the KPI, the outcome that we want to produce. How you have the competency to achieve that outcome or the goal or KPI. This is where we measure your competency. So if you have the competency, yeah, for you to achieve that KPI, to reduce your weight by 5 kilo, then you'll be able to achieve that goal or KPI. So this is where we measure your behavior, the indicators. Yeah. For example, you have the knowledge to achieve that goal. How you achieve that knowledge? You must have knowledge. Yeah. For example, you must learn. Yeah. You have knowledge about food, kind of food that you have to take. Yeah. You must have knowledge about health, that kind of thing. So how I know that you have the competency of knowledge? So, for example, it's through your behavior. For example, how many courses or training program that you have attended. That is some kind of the measurement. How many certification or qualification that you have earned in order for you to become competent about that weight loss, for example. Yeah, that's an example. So this is where been measured through your indicator. So this is what we mentioned in the dictionary. Yeah, you understand, for example, of what. Yeah, you identify something of what. That is your behavior indicator. But we must be able to measure that through behavioral performance indicator. The behavioral performance indicator. how many times you have attended the classes or the training, yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah? So this is something that, so when you competent here and can be measured in the way, only then that it relate to your on your outcome or the KPI. So the extent that employee have competence, we measure with behavioral performance indicator. That translated that. So this is where we try to make sure that when we do the assessment of the competency, it's no longer is just based on KPI. You know, you see that you are, what do you call it, when you achieve your KPI, then you are competent. Yeah, you may not be competent. Yeah, because you may not have all the requirement of the KSA and AI attitude. For example, some people, they try to achieve that 5 kilo just now, they have the wrong attitude. Yeah, taking wrong supplement. The supplement is not approved by the Ministry of Health, for example. That is the wrong attitude, wrong attribute. So you may not be competent, although at the end of the year you achieve 5 kilos. This is not what we want. You may be a good leaders, you have a knowledge, a skill, but you have the wrong attitude, the wrong attribute. For example, you are not, level of your integrity is very low, yeah, in terms of your responsibility, yeah. Orang kata amanah, there's no amanah there. That is not competent yet. Yeah, although you are knowledgeable or skillful. So we cannot simply measure the level of competency just based on the KPI, just based on the performance of the person. Yeah? So it must be holistic in this way. So this is very part that we have to be very careful. Yeah. So that is some of the challenges that we're facing. But having said that, we can see a lot of opportunities, or what they call it, benefit, when we implement this so-called CBTM. Yeah? So I want to share with you now some of the benefit or the opportunities that we can derive from this CBTM. The first one is on the understanding of expected behavior and performance. This is very important. If you want to achieve a success, or you want to achieve some kind of performance, or want to achieve whatever strategic goals, strategic objective you need to have, you must understand what kind of behavior that you want to be within our talent. What kind of behavior that the talent should, that you should represent within your organization. Yeah, this is very important. That will drive you. On what kind of behavior they want. Yeah, that behavior that could link to the performance of your organization. That's number one. Number two is in terms of improved talent planning. So this, we are struggling with the talent planning. Oh, this is always happening in our institution, irrespective whether we are in the public or private institution. We are having problem with it. Be able to how to do a proper talent planning. You know, what kind of talent that you want to bring in into your organization, what kind of talent that you want to develop within your organization, what kind of talent that you want to develop for future talent requirement for your talent pool, for your succession planning, for leadership, that kind of thing. So it is something that very, very relevant, because when you use CBTM, you will be able to identify specific skill set that you want to develop to support your future direction or future goal or your strategic objective. Yeah. The third one is on in terms of your optimize your training and development strategy. Yeah. This is very important, because most of the time when we decide on what kind of training or development program is based on recommendation, because at the end of the year, normally the employee or the supervisor or the officers or the head of department will suggest a kind of training program or development program. Yeah, and most of the time, this program or development strategy are not aligned to the competency of the employee or the competency requirement of the organization. Yeah, that relate to the performance of the employee and also the achievement of the KPI or the target of the organization. Yeah. And also the other one is enhanced talent pipeline. So once you be able to identify specific competency that drive your performance, is also achievement of your goal or the target, you'll be able to identify a group of people that will be able to become your future talent. It is important for future talent, because you'll be able to identify those critical position. Yeah. That one will help you to prepare the readiness of your future talent is also be able to help in that way. Yeah. The next one is in terms of improved operational efficiency. Yeah. Because competency management will facilitate the so-called the business-driven learning and development. So it will eliminate non-value add training, be able to highlight a strength to be further developed. Yeah, this is very important, and also generate high level of employee and leader satisfaction. So because they are very focused, they know what they're supposed to focus on, and they are competent in doing their work and tasks, and the employee and leader will have high level of satisfaction. Yeah, and they have a good experience within the organization. And the other one is that on integrated talent processes. Yeah, this is serving as the standard for expected performance by the job role. Yeah, competency management become the standard by which the highest performing organization talk about and manage all the phases of the employee life cycle. Yeah, from talent acquisition to development and to retention as well as reward. So this is some of the opportunities or benefit when the organization be able to develop or apply or implement CBTM. Yeah. So what will be our challenges? We have our challenges and we have our opportunities. So what will be the way forward on that? And how you would be able to strengthen the implementation of this CBTM? So in this case, I think there are three things that I think is quite important. Number one is that the CBTM strategy. Yeah. So I think every institution, the university, for example, should have a very clear strategy on the CBTM. We need to have a proper strategic plan. We need to have a proper roadmap and action plan. Yeah. So this is very, very critical because this is the why part and the purpose why we want to have CBTM in our organization. So we must have a very clear strategy. This is our purpose. This is our goal. Yeah. So once we have a clear purpose, clear goal, and we know what to do. Yeah. So once you know your why, and you'll be able to know what to do. Yeah. But strategy alone will not be enough, will not be sufficient. You need the second part where we are referring here is the CBTM system. We need to have a CBTM clear framework. Yeah. We have to have the competency framework. And we also need to have the competency assessment program. This is a system so that we be able to execute our strategy. Yeah, because we need the system. The system, this is referring to the how part, how you implement your CBTM strategy. So we need to have the framework. We need to have the CBTM framework, the competency framework, as well as the competency assessment framework. The last part is that what we need is the structure. Yeah, you may have nice strategy, you may have a very good system, but you don't have the right people to implement the strategy and also the system. That's why you need to have a qualified competency developer. So I think this is very important for the UA to work on developing our competency talent. We need also the qualified competency assessor, and also we need to have the continuous development program. So this is part of the way forward that I think that we have to look into seriously. We need to have a clear strategy on CBTM. We have to develop our system and as well to develop our people so that we be able to implement the CBTM a more structured way. And the most important thing that it will give benefit to the institution as well as the individual within our organization. So that this is about the few things that I want to share with all of you today. And if anyone would like to ask, and then I welcome everyone. Yeah, and if not, I will hand over to Dr. Shakira.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ahmad, for his sharing. So he has included his experience as well in talent management, as particularly the competency-based talent management. So my dear panelists, Dr. Rahayu, Dr. Ismi, and also Dr. Ahmad, we have several questions here. Let me read the question maybe one by one. All right. We have question from Dr. Prof. Zainal Abidin bin Sanusi from YouTube. Okay, he asked, what will be the Insani implication on the CBTM? So I open to any panelists to answer this question.
I'm not familiar with, is there a special term he's using from cult-based? Ismi, are you familiar with that? Or is it just generically Islamic, Insaniyah?
Could it also be in relation to the center that you currently run, Insan? Probably from, that was where possibly that it could derive the coin of that word Insan.
Prof. Zainal, ini clarification. Nanti jawapan of tangent.
The word Insan there refers to values. Right? Take from the perspective of values, I think this is where, if I may share our perspective of the word Al-Qawi and Al-Amin tadi tu, yeah. And I think Dr. Ahmad Tab also mentioned about values, yeah, amanah. This is where, in fact, if we share the experience of ACAP, a lot of words have come that we should put in values in our competency model and to be measured. Yeah, so this is where the real struggle is, the challenge is. In fact, the word wisdom, if we look to the cult in your model of framework, yeah, they have words like wisdom, they have words like courage, they have words that are intangible in nature for us to measure. And if we were to put this in the context of competency model, I must say very strongly that it will not be an easy job for the assessor to actually be in a sitting of a 2.5 hour session to then gauge what is the level of amanah of a person. Because the word amanah, the word kebijaksanaan, wisdom, yeah, has to come through the experiences and observation of your university. For example, the word amanah, if it were to into the context of measure from the perspective of CBTM, like what Dr. Ahmad Tab mentioned. Dr. Ahmad Tab, please correct me if I'm wrong, yeah? Has to be defined in a clear operational definition so that we will be able to fetch information and evidences that exist in the ecosystem of the organization itself. Either the university that the person has worked with, probably affiliated associations that the university members have been working with, yeah. So we have got to be very clear what we mean by the value of insan that we would like to measure in the context of talent management as well as succession planning, because it comes back to the word integrity for that matter, yeah. At ACAP, we believe it is binary. It's either you have it or you don't have it. How can you measure a person is 3.5% of integrity as compared to a person who is 5% integrity? Even if the person is a 4.9 integrity, but at the end of the day, by that putting that number into the measure of integrity, do we want to appoint the person as a leader or to be even considered in our talent pool? Because we know there is a tendency that will draw the person to be to practice something that is against the value of integrity. So these are the areas at ACAT. I must share with my dear colleagues here at ACAT, we are facing that challenge because the demand out there is about measuring values. And in 2019, if we may recall, yeah, there was actually one of our aspiration of driving what we call, instead of CBTM, we wanted to put CVBTM. And the V is even bigger than the C, because the fundamental of being a leader, the values have to be right, which we agree. Yeah, we are not denying the fact that values should not be in the framework, but values should be fetched from the university members' observation and association in terms of giving that input to ACAP, right? And this is where we have done way back in 2014, 2015, I think, if Dr. Zainal is addressing this question, way back then, I was not in the system yet, but I was made to understand that ACAP did use a tool that is 360 in nature, meaning to get feedback from the community of members of talents. Yeah, that means there are the feedback daripada the superior, yeah, the peers as well as the subordinates. Now, what happened in that context is that the director of ACAP then received pages of statements about the candidate, but they are all not verified statements. They are just narrative about the candidate or narrative about the talents that we have at ACAP, which are not supported by evidences. If I may give example, for example, orang ini tidak boleh jadi TNC contohnya, ya, dia tulis orang ini tidak boleh jadi TNC kerana dia tidak bagus. Jadi the word bagus tu macam mana ACAP nak terjemahkan? Alright, so bagus tu mestilah diterjemahkan dalam bentuk bukti. Mungkin kerana telah diberi untuk lead satu jawatan kuasa, tetapi projek yang telah diamanahkan itu tidak terlaksana contohnya, right? So this is where eventually after evaluating the 360 feedback at ACAP, we did a lot of engagement to understand why university members are not ready in terms of utilizing or maximizing 360. So that was one of the efforts, the early efforts that were put into the system in 2014, 2015. And this will then relate to the word insan. If we are using CBTM as a fundamental, insan can be in the framework. But the definition of insan has to have a clarity of direction and has to have a clarity of purpose. What do we want to establish from the word insan and later propagate under CBTM framework? Because I believe even as myself, as a junior academic, yeah, going through this 5-year journey with ACAP, value is a very pertinent domain that needs to be evaluated, that needs to be measured, but it has to come with a clarity of framework, what will fall under that element of values. Yeah, so in that sense, I am not too sure if this would also respond to the CULP model of the 4 major domains. Yeah, even if we say a leader must have courage, how do you evaluate courage in a 2.5-hour BEI interview, for example? Kan, Dr. Ahmad? It has to be through the observation that you have worked with this person. University members are able to give this feedback to you, and university members are willing to become are willing to allow ACAP to have this information about the candidate. So barulah kita boleh kata the holistic report card tadi tu, kerana sekarang ni we depend very much on the competency score and also the academic leadership standing and also all the affiliation related to the respective professors in terms of their work with external parties, with their professional members and all that. So we hope, I probably hope that this will respond well to Dr. Zainal in terms of understanding the concept of insan and putting it in the framework of CBTM. Thank you. Probably anything from you, Dr. Mahtab?
Yeah, I think one of the things I mentioned just now is about the competency performance standard. This is what, kalau kita refer what Dr. Ismi mentioned just now, if you want to measure value, first, I think we need to have a very clear definition of the name of the competency. So, for example, if you want to measure amanah, whatever thing, how you describe that competency name, value? Because some institution value is could be part of your competency because we fall under the category number 3, your attitude, attribute, your traits, your belief, and so on. So we have to must have a very clear definition. That is the one. Secondly, we need to develop the competency performance standard. So how you describe that? You know, what will be the standard when you describe that particular competency? Yeah, because we want to measure. Because the measurement is not just about 2 hours interview. It's about how the candidate, the person, yeah, having that so-called competency. Yeah, so we must develop what they call it the competency performance standard. This performance competency standard will describe, yeah, the characteristic of that particular competency. And how we measure that is we measure that through the behavioral performance indicator, which is the evidence based. So the person must be able to produce so-called the evidence that to describe the level of his or her performance. We cannot simply say, oh, what Dr. Ismi cakap, oh, dia tak sesuai menjadi TMC, tak sesuai. The tak sesuai is not something that you can measure. It must be translated something that we can measure. So the measurement is very important. So the process may not be immediate. You can't get it within 2 hours. How we can get it is when you have the competency performance standard. That standard can be used over a period of time. So the whatever potential, this is where how we relate CBTM to our talent pool. So because once you identify the talent pool, you have already a list of characteristic or the standard we want to have within the talent pool. So this talent pool will be measured over time with that specific standard. Yeah, and that standard can be measured through their performance, what do you call it, the behavioral performance indicator with specific evidence. So the collection of this evidence over time, then this is where we can use at the end of the day when they are being selected for whatever position, the record is already within the system. This is what we call it the CBTM, because CBTMs across the activities of the talent management, not only for specific tasks, not only meant for, what do you call it, succession planning, no. Yeah? From the person join the organization until the person retire from the organization, that is the whole process. So this is what I meant just now. We need to have the system. Yeah? We may have policy and everything is fine, but without the system, you cannot implement it. You cannot implement the CBTM effectively. Yeah, we need a proper framework. We need to have a proper assessment method in that way. So we do that. It's not something easy. I'm telling you, it's not something easy because people have different perspective, have the way how they want to measure because of their own interest within the organization. But we must come to certain kind of, not say agreement, but understanding or consensus when you want to describe what is so-called competent compared to non-competent. Even when we measure competency, normally we have 4 different levels. For example, this is the way how we measure the competency. Most of the time, you want everyone within the organization meet the level of expectation, mean the level of competency level. Everyone, minimum we should have, anyone that we bring to organization must have or must meet the minimum or the expected the competency level. But most of the time, not everyone will be in that level. Some people may be below that level, below the competency level. Or some of them may not have that level of competency. But some of them also beyond that, exceed that level of competency within their own competency level. Because we decide, we structure the competency with certain level. You are what they call it, the basic level, you are competent level, or you the expert level, that kind of thing. You have different level. But within that level, so you have at least 4 different level of competency. Whether you do not have the competency, or you are below the level of competency, or you meet the level of competency, or you exceed. So this every level we need to describe that. We need to have the so-called performance standard. What do we mean by meeting the level of competency? What we mean by beyond or exceed the level of competency? What is if you are below the competency, and what if you don't have the competency? That's very important. The description is very, very important because that description will relate to or link to your behavioral performance indicator, which in that case, individually or the organization have to produce the evidence. That evidence. So that evidence must be provided in order for us to confirm that particular employee have shown the competency level for that particular name of competency or the type of competency. Yeah.
Thank you, AP Dr. Ismi and also Dr. Ahmad for the answers just now. Let me read the second question from Prof. Dr. Faiza Abdul Majid, UITM. Some universities retain retired professors to hold relevant admin posts at the university level. how could this strategy be assisting CBTM in the context of talents for sustainable future? From YouTube. Dr. Ayu, your mic.
Maybe Dr. Ayu want to share your
The application of it is I think Dr. Ismi would have better feedback from the universities, but to the best of my knowledge, this is not something that was never considered before, but it is not sustainable due to the cost. It's quite expensive to maintain such a program. However, I believe at some points in some universities, should there be a professor who's highly valuable, highly qualified, some universities will fork out or I don't know, find some money somewhere to keep the professors employed. However, another way that they knew over the years, because I remember this is a conversation even during when I was serving under Tan Sri Sharifah Hafsah. It had been toyed with, but I think it was one of the reasons why the Orange Book is very much welcome, because it is to allow for participation in the different tracks that we have to be considered and accounted for promotion. That way, anybody who's on any track, particularly at the time, I think the very new one was the track leadership track, which was never ever been considered before the Orange Book. So I would think the plus side of having a very experienced professor still continue to serve a university. I think personally we at UKM, Dato Sharifah Mastura is an example of somebody who we retained, but she got a she was still the director of one of the centers, and her research was funded by an external party, so we were able to keep her on service. But other than that, I think we are also trying to encourage the young blood. If you remember earlier, there was the Dr. Ismi mentioned about comments made by Tan Sri Wahid, where at in the universities in Malaysia, if you're 40 and you become the dean, it's the outlier. It's like, how come you're so young and you're already a dean? But with the track that we have, the 4 tracks that we have now, I think it's okay, it's possible. The only thing is anybody who goes on the leadership track will need to I guess double up on their work, because the criteria will still be academic, certain parts of it. It's just the minimum. At UCAM, at least the minimum is still about publication, the ERK, but is you excel at the leadership track for criteria that is solely for leadership. So I don't know, maybe it can be done. Some other universities have done it. Over to Dr. Ismi.
Thank you, Dr. Ayu. If I may extend from that, Dr. Shakira. Thank you very much to Prof. Faiza Majid, UITM. She's actually one of my mentors back there in UITM. We come from the same background, that is TESOL, yeah, and she currently is a director of ISAP, yeah, focusing on lifelong learning under the university. Very interesting that she has posted this concern about having retired professors to hold relevant admin posts. In the view of ACAP, we support very much what has been mentioned by Dr. Ayu. This could be professors who have got evidence of accomplishments, yeah, and they are highly respected in their respective field. Yeah, if we go by the Orange Book, of course, they probably are researchers who have contributed significantly to the university, and we need to retain them in the system because we want to actually clone more of them. All right, so this is where in the ecosystem of CBTM, if let's say the university has identified that this would be one or the few professors who we should retain, then it could be a subject matter to the university to study and to analyze what are the behaviors of this professor that will be related to the competency framework of the university. Then it probably will then come back to whether it matches the DNA of the university, the expectations of the university. So if we were to see it from a positive light, those retired professors who are currently in the system, we should leverage on the existence of these retired professors and study and analyze what are the competencies and behaviors that we need to include more in our competency framework, so that we'll be able to then create tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 of that professor. So this is where the leadership pipeline, we hope, or the talent management pipeline, if we have this top scientists, of the research track. So we want more of the top scientists of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4. Therefore, that is the whole ecosystem of CBTM cycle, whereby we don't only focus on who are ready for the position, but more in terms of grooming and developing and building the younger ones, so that we give hope to them, so that leadership doesn't remain status quo in the future. All right, because we know eventually these retired professors will have to go, because there will be a maximum age period that they can remain in the system. So while they are in the system and the university believe that they have got evidences of accomplishments for the university to be taken to the next level, so we have to take the opportunity of putting this in our CBTM framework, CBTM structure, CBTM process, so that we be able to clone more of that professor. So eventually the leadership pipeline or the talent management pipeline of the university will have a continuous cycle. So we hope that understanding the context of the CBTM, of course, kadang-kadang issue about cost implication will come into picture in terms of retaining these professors. But from the perspective of ACAP, we believe that these professors who are retained in the system, they have shown and they have proven their evidences in terms of their successful behaviors that eventually lead to a lot of accomplishments for the university. So I think from the point of view of ACAP, let's leverage them who are still in the system, study them, and clone more of them, so that the leadership pipeline and the talent management pipeline will have ready people in the future. Even at ACAP, we are currently looking into not just the national top talent. We have started mobilizing, identifying talents at the age of 40, between 40 to 45, those who are below 40, and we call them the national emerging talent, because we believe they need to be they need to be in the radar of ACAP, so they get motivated and they get the network that we establish at ACAP for them to grow in terms of their relationship building, in terms of their competencies to establish a friendship and also network with other universities. So even at ACAP, we are already creating tiers so that we don't just focus on those who are already ready, but we need to also give the opportunity to our emerging talents in the system, so they get connected to ACAP through our development program, through our webinar series, and it will open up their views and also open up their perspectives on leadership in higher education. So we build them from now, because probably like all three panels agree, probably this is something new for higher education ecosystem, because we have to come back to that fundamental of things. Do we really believe in talent management and succession planning in higher education? Because that is actually the root of either we will gain success or it will then later sink us. So it will take us in any way, in any extreme, if we don't really look at it in a very serious concern about putting this talent management and succession planning. And we worry also, actually, Dr. Shakira, if maknanya the professors remain, the retired professors remain, but nothing is done to clone, then it will then reflect on the university management, for instance. It will reflect on the university management that there's no form of initiative to drive talent management and succession planning. Because if we keep retaining and we are not able to supply more of the young ones, then there is something that is not right in the whole cycle of the talent management ecosystem. That's from us. Thank you.
Thank you, AP Dr. Rahayu and also AP Dr. Ismi. We have 2 more minutes before 12:30, and we have more questions, and maybe we can answer the questions later, maybe in the Facebook, maybe. But I'm very sorry that can we take one question, simple question, or we just end, just ask the panelists? We have many questions actually. Dr. Ayu?
There's one on pandemic that I think Dr. Ahmad can answer that easily.
Right. Yeah, Dr. Ahmad. Very
Dr. Ahmad, you see, the question is there any part of CBTM model which prepares and assess how future leaders can calmly but strongly address unpredicted crises, such as the COVID pandemic situation? Does COVID, to a certain extent, makes us rethink of other possible elements which should be incorporated besides the usual KSA?
Okay, maybe I could give some kind of response to that. This is one of the competency required by the leader. This is what they call it, making decision during the uncertainty. So this is one of the critical, I think most of the university, when you look into your competency list, one of the most popular competency, one of the most popular competencies is on decision making. So this is one way that, you know, if we could strengthen that, this is what I'm referring to the competency standard we mentioned about that. So when we see that whatever situation we are in, COVID is one of the examples, but we may face with some other challenges in the near future, post-COVID and so on. So we want to make sure that our leaders are ready for those full of uncertainty, environment or situation, and how we deal with that. So one of the main, one of the competencies that we're talking about is making decision. How you make decision in that situation. I think we have a lot of example before in our industry, you know, even though maybe not in the university, but in other part of the industry, you know, how leaders are making wrong decision can affect badly to their organization. Yeah. For example, we had, this Kodak, yeah, an example, you know, how they are reluctant to move the way how they are supposed to be good at that on the digital technology and everything, but they are left behind. Yeah, we have Nokia is an example. Again, another example. It's all bad decision. Yeah. How is Yahoo? They're supposed to have the opportunity to buy Google for 1 million. Now Google is already 500 billion value of company. So it's all how they are making decision that particular way with the different situation environment. So I think we need to identify this kind of critical competency set for leaders to face with all this challenging environment. Yeah. So I think it's not just about COVID, it's any other challenges moving forward, but we need to prepare the leaders with, you know, that side of competency.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmad, for the answer. Right, I was told by the technical team that the Zoom will be extended until 1 p.m. So I'm just asking the speakers, are you going to answer the questions? Or can answer later on in the Facebook?
I'd be quite all right to take maybe 1 or 2 questions. Is it all right, Dr. Ayu and Dr. Ahmad? Probably Dr. Ahmad is worried. Okay, we keep at 12:45 here, Dr. Ahmad.
Okay, Dr. Ahmad, is it okay with you? All right. All right, from Prof. Talib here. Based on my understanding, the implementation of CBTM needs change management, especially mindset management, involving the entire organization. Okay, however, Prof. Ismi stated earlier, among the issues and challenges in the implementation of CBM is the influence of certain parties. What are the views of the distinguished panel and how to address the issue related to quality versus quality and credibility or capability versus capability in the implementation of CBTM? Thank you.
One very challenging question from Prof. Talib. And I believe that comes back to one of my slides just now for us to reflect upon CBTM or the implementation and execution of CBTM in the higher education sector. Whether we are seriously going towards it, are we really genuine and authentic in our aspiration to address the leadership crisis that has been written, that has been taught by many people from various quarters, yeah, even our academics and as well as the industry leaders, yeah. So if we look in the perspective of the question of whether nak tahu orang itu ada capability dan sebagainya, this is where the competency-based talent management framework is very critical. As mentioned by Dr. Ahmad Tab, the system, the structure and the framework. And in fact, as we see what's happening in the context of my 5 years experience here at ACAP, if let's say we have put all the governing issues together, the framework, the system as well as the structure, but the buy-in is not there, the acceptance is also not welcome by the management of the university as well as the Ministry of Higher Education, then it will just be beautiful on a piece of paper. All right, and at the end of the day, 10 years from now, Dr. Shakira, we probably will still have a webinar session. We will still have debates upon why are we not ready in terms of our national top talent pool. Why do we not have ready leaders for key positions of the leadership? Because we never address that from all the journal papers that we write, from all the articles that we put in the newspaper. What is the action now on the side of ACAP, on the side of all universities? As we know, going back to one of my earlier slides, the Green Book, we talk about the role of the board of directors, yeah? And in ACAP, as one of the agency under the ministry, with due respect to the roles mentioned, of course, we also have the autonomy in our record to ensure that we do not do something that will cross into a territory that doesn't belong to us. So these are the things that if, let's say, the board of directors play their role effectively in terms of the succession planning as well as talent management, and it becomes the KPI to all the top management of 20 public universities. So this is where we believe that CBTM can be driven to a certain extent. Otherwise, it will just remain a dream, it remains an aspiration, it remains a topic that we talk about, but at the end of the day, no action is taken. That is my humble point of view, Dr. Shakira.
Thank you, Dr. Ismi. Any other response from other panelists? All right. Maybe I think we can take just the last question. Just last question. Since just now, Prof.
How are tensions between ethical dilemmas?
Do you have any questions that you want to answer, Dr. Ayu?
No, I'm just reading. How are tensions between ethical dilemmas and self-interest resolved through CBTM in the aspect of organizational leadership? That's that's a question that we ourselves, I think Dr. Ismi has explained how we try through CBVTM, how it is something that we wanna, we are working towards. Hopefully we're trying to find ways to get proxies to represent issues of ethics and how to measure ethics and integrity. And you know, interesting that I think is every one of us are interested to know about that.
I think this one question about the dictionary I saw here, that on the why we cannot standardize one. So I think the discussion just now, what happened is that it's a challenge for us to come up with a general competency framework for the UA. So if we be able to have some level of understanding or the consensus on how we could come out with may not be specific, but we could have a general competency framework for the UA. That is become a reference point for all the UA. So for example, we have a generic so-called general competency framework. That's number one. How we address this, how to standardize for example, the dictionary. Second one, we must also need to have a consensus in identification of critical competencies for UA. Because I think we can understand that most of us within the institution, we have some level of understanding. And most of the time, the list, atau what they call it, the critical competence is also the same. The only thing is that we call it with different names. Different names. But in the things that where I've seen that many UA, you have the same competency. The only thing, you have different names and the way how you describe that competency. So if we be able to come out with a general competency framework for UA, so become a reference point for all the universities, and at the same time we'll be able to identify those critical competency. Other competencies, we leave it to the UA. You can have additional, but we have certain critical competency that applicable to all UA. This is, I think, is not something difficult for us to come out, because most of the university already you have kind of competency that you have, or the only thing that we need to understand and have some kind of agreement that this will be the so-called critical competency that applicable to all universities, and the rest of the university can have their own so-called specific competency for their own needs. Yeah, so I think that is the way how we could address why we are not able to have a standardized competency dictionary.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmad Tab. Maybe Dr. Shakira, if I may extend from the suggestion from Dr. Ahmad Tab, I think that's insights to look into what ACAP currently is doing. Dr. Ahmad Tab, we do have what we call the ACAP leadership, generic leadership competency model. Yeah, and we also acknowledge the fact that all universities are categorized into the different clusters, and all universities would say that, what we have in our competency model may not match what they have or what they aspire or what they expect for. So that is where a lot of our engagement with universities, we tell them that if ACAP is to cater to all the requests and the DNA and the different expectations of the 20 public universities, then we will have satu competency model yang sangat besar, yang mungkin nanti satu art block pun tak cukup, because like I mentioned, when we were trying to work on the leadership competency model, we put very prominent people, like Tan Sri Zulkifli Razak was on board, Tan Sri Sharifah Hapsah, we had Tan Sri Salih Yassin, we had Tan Sri Anwar Ali, and from the industry partners, we had, of course, people like Tan Sri Wahid Omar, Tan Sri Zarina, and they were all contributing to what would be the core competencies that govern the generic expectations of all organizations, because we have to also acknowledge the fact that talent mobility is currently very evident in our ecosystem. Therefore, through like what Dr. Ahmad Tab suggested, we need to have that generic leadership competency, but in the identification process where the universities own this work process, what they can do at their level is to have their own competency model within their university CBTM framework. And this is where eventually the feeder to ACAP, and also the feeder to probably in terms of fetching what would be in our dictionary competency. Because like what Dr. Ahmad Tab mentioned, even at ACAP, from the framework, we have developed to the extent of a very comprehensive and very detailed competency dictionary to describe and to give specific descriptors of behaviors to map the person in terms of level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, and of course the issue of putting people at levels would also have different views from our academics as well as administrators, because it's like putting numbers to this group of people. Yeah, and that is where ACAP holds strongly to the fact that we have the competency score, and it has to be supported with other information that are readily available at the university, in which university must be ready to allow the information to be given to ACAP in the case where probably the name of the candidate is being fetched for key positions and so forth. Yeah, and this is where the holistic approach to CBTM will take into perspective. And I think from our little experience at ACAP, we agree that one instrument and one tool is not the be all and end all to decide whether the person is ready for a position of VC or DVC. But some form of assessment has to be done because we need to have that database of ready people when they apply, especially now when the position is open for application, or when their names are being fetched. The role of ACAP is really to check whether these people are already identified as talents at the university level. So these are all the work process that's happening at ACAP, and we need to educate the higher education ecosystem that the process comes back to that ethos approach. We take into consideration the ethics, we take into consideration the transparency of the information that we put in our profiling report, and also information that is objective for the jawatankuasa to evaluate. So these are all the, what we say, the operational side of CBTM that probably many may not have the privilege of being exposed to the current practices that we have in our higher education. We are trying our level best to put a system and to put up a database of national top talent, because like now what we see, in fact in 2018, ACAP visited Majlis Profesor Negara pada masa itu, MPN kan. We visited, we shared our initiative, we shared the set of criteria that we currently use for talent identification, we shared our competency model. So we talked to various relevant and significant parties to ensure that we receive feedback and we put that into our attention so that it will be addressed accordingly in the work process of ACAP. So it's not something that ACAP fetch a model from human resource, we put on paper and we just follow what the industry people are doing. Because like I say, it comes back to that ethos concept. We go back to the culture of the organization, of the ecosystem that we are in, and we take into consideration the two main elements, the attitudes as well as the aspiration of the sector. So these are some of the context of CBTM that we believe is a lot of work, like Dr. Ahmad mentioned, yeah? It's a lot of work, and at the end of the day, whether we are ready to change, whether our human resources office at the universities are also ready to change, and whether we have the right fit, the right competent people to really run the portfolio of managing talents, because otherwise then it will come back to the concern of Prof. Izzah just now. If I may take also, Datuk Nozaini has mentioned that in very probably, you know, in universities abroad, some professors are retained at the age of 70. So that comes back to the point that I made earlier in terms of retaining these retired professors to a certain age. Of course, there's a limit. There's definitely a limit. But if we continue to increase the limit, but not grooming and developing others, then we are losing that sustainable talent pipeline. And this will eventually demotivate, and it will create an ecosystem that is not healthy in the higher education ecosystem. Because if we say that we have professors, we have associate professors, we have PhD holders, aren't we suggesting that these are all very talented people, people with knowledge, people with skills, yeah? So how do we then clone the 70-year-old professors to have more of that at tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, so that the leadership pipeline of the organization will continue to have a cohesive cycle, and leadership will never be a big question mark anymore in the future. So we have to create and design an ecosystem that will give hope to our young academics, because they're seeing us from the ground right now, yeah, looking at how we are running things and why people, the same people are retained in the same position and things like that, because it's suggesting that we are never ready in terms of grooming talents, and we have never established that trust about people holding positions and leaving office. So these are the things that we have to put in the context of CBTM.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmad, and also AP Dr. Ismi Rohan. And again, thank you very much to Associate Professor Dr. Rahayu, Associate Professor Dr. Ismi, and also Dr. Ahmad. And also, I'm very sorry for the audiences whose questions are not answered. Inshallah, in future, we will have more sessions on designing the talent. Okay, and also based on the questions regarding the slides, Secretariat will upload all the slides at the APM website, www.academyprofessor.org.my. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, in designing talent for sustainable future, CBTM could be embraced, and also it should be done in a concerted effort. As a saying goes, that to every beginning there is an ending. On behalf of the organizer, I would like to thank Prof. Datuk Dr. Daina Se, the APM Chairman, Prof. Rosna, the Head of Cluster of Education and Human Development APM, Prof. Faizah Shabuddin, Chair Task Force CBTM Cluster of Education and Human Development APM, the panelists, Associate Professor Dr. Ayu, Associate Professor Dr. Ismi, and also Dr. Ahmad, also Associate Professor Dr. Yazrina Yahya from ECAP, Talent and Development Units personnel, APM members, magnetic members, and ladies and gentlemen for spending your time with us in this event today. And now, the CBTM Designing Talent for Sustainable Future has come to its end. Once again, thank you very much, everyone, for participating in this session, and also your presence is very much appreciated. So let's end our session with the photo session. Could you please switch on the video?
All right. All right. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Once again, we have 4 groups here. Right.
Thank you everyone for coming.
Okay.
Inshallah, we have more sessions like this in future.
Right, Dan.
So please
Thank you
visit
very
our
much, Prof.
website, our APM website. We have downloaded all the slides in the website.
Thank you so much, Prof. Rosna, for the opportunity. Thank you, Puan Shima, for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Ismi. Thank you, Dr. Rahayu. Thank you,
Thank you,
Dr.
Shima.
Ahmad.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Assalamualaikum.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your
Thank you,
support.
everyone.
Everyone.
Salam. Nanti kita akan ada siri 2 pula lepas ni, insyaAllah.
Thanks, Prof. Faizah.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Okay, tuan. Bye. Assalamualaikum.
Salam. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, APM.